Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we are talking about what really happened, headcanon here, between episode 19 and episode 20 in the final season 15. But before we get into all those juicy theories, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and I have been a fan since the night the pilot aired. Kitty, who is currently off screen, has been a fan since 2020.
Okay. Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Zubernis. I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor at West Chester University. I've also been a fan from the beginning, and I've written, I think I'm in the process of writing my 7th book about Supernatural, and I've written 2 of them with the cast of the show. So obviously, big fan.
Very cool. Lynn Kramer.
Hi, I'm Lynn Kramer, and I'm a professor at the University of South Carolina, and I've been a fan for probably like 7 or 8 years. I'm not really sure when I started binging it.
Okay. And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all my modern day worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in time for the start of season 12, and never looked back. So, absolutely love the show, the characters, the cast, everything. So, the ending of the series, at least for now, episodes 19 and 20 in season 15. We had a triumph over Chuck in 19, and then we had a horrific loss and aftermath in 20. But they don't really flesh out how long there was between 19 and 20, or what else the boys were doing. In my headcanon, it didn't happen. Episode 20 didn't happen immediately after after episode 19. So how long do you think it was? And what do you think they were doing in that time? And let's start with, how long do you think it was? Melissa?
Well, I got to put some context on this. I remember that the night that the last episode aired, and you were running a post-episode debrief for the fans of the TFWNC Facebook group, Team Free Will North Carolina Facebook group. And we weren't even really friends back then. And I was just like unhinged. I was crying so hard, and I had lost all grips with reality because I was like, I don't understand how they could kill Dean off just after they got they got free, and then I was like, but more to the point, I was like, they've always said that they wanted to reboot it. There is no space. And you were like, well, we don't know how long it was between 19 and 20. There's time there. It's not like they woke up the next day. So my feeling is 3 to 5 years. It had to be enough time. I would say at least 3 to 5 years, and I'll explain why later.
Okay. Lynn Zubernis?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it doesn't really give us any overt clues about how long it was, but it seems very intentional that they begin 1520 with this montage of the boys having settled into life at the bunker, and they specifically showed that they have developed routines, which routines take a while to do. You see that Sam is so used to like doing the wash that he knows exactly when to kick the dryer. You see that Miracle knows exactly when he's going to get to lick the dishes. You see that Dean knows exactly when he's going to have to catch the toast. Like, it's very clear that they've been there for a long time. I mean, I don't know how anybody could see it as this happened immediately, because humans just don't settle into routines like that quickly. So yeah, I mean, Jared and Jensen have also sort of headcanoned that it was 3 to 5 years. So I'm going to go with that.
Okay. Lynn Kramer?
Well, I didn't know any of that as far as the headcanon with the 3 to 5 years. To me, it was like it had to be at least a year but it didn't necessarily have to be, for me, more than that, because they go off and maybe they explore around. How long they do that, not really sure. As far as their routines, to me, well, they've had gaps before between things to get used to routines of doing things in the bunker without people before. And I mean, you could do that within like a month or two. So I could see it being shorter than 3 to 5, but yeah, I'd like it if it was at least 3 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, I can wrap my head around 3 to 5 years. I also think that, again, headcanon and deep heart desire that they come back and do something additional with the show. Neither of these guys in real life seem to age. So they could definitely still look the same as long as we get to it fairly soon, um, as they did in between 19 and 20. And I don't care if Jared lives to be 110, he's never going to look like Sam in the Impala with that front.
No, no.
Jared could not look like that. I'm sorry, he's still going to be a sexy senior when he's 109. But I think that having several years in there certainly creates that opportunity for them to finally get to do some things that they didn't get a chance to do, which leads me into the next question of what do you think would have been their priorities if they didn't have to banish ghosts, kill monsters, and save the world? Melissa, you're muted. Oh, okay, Lynn. Oh,
Oh,
Melissa's back.
um, you asked a question I wasn't prepared to answer. So I'll just take a twist on it. I think in the immediate aftermath, there was a constant looking over their shoulder because, like, monsters weren't gone, just angels and demons, right? So they still had monsters, but I think there would have been a lot of looking over their shoulders, not really believing it, a lot of like PTSD to deal with. Um, and then I think that, Dean would have started messing around with the cars that were in the bunker, and Sam would have started doing the library work, getting everything cataloged. I think that that's would have been that initial exhale before we get to even going to the Pie Festival in 1520.
Okay, Lynn Zubernis.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that too. I think probably it took them a while to just sort of comprehend the gigantic change that had happened in their lives, that they did have free will, they were writing their own story, they could do whatever they wanted to do, no one was pulling the strings for them, but B, the world was different. I mean, there were still vampires and the monsters that they grew up learning to hunt, but for years it had been this on a cosmic level of angels and demons and God and Lucifer, and it was really really up there. The stakes were just incredibly high, and they were always on the verge of an apocalypse. So I think that was probably very difficult for them for a while. I mean, this is a kind of a ridiculous comparison of a real life situation, but even like I remember when I finished my PhD, which was onerous, not apocalyptic, but onerous. And when I finished it, I thought that I would just be like, oh, life is wonderful. But instead, there was this protracted period where I kept being like, what should I be doing? What should I be doing? What do I have to do? Oh my God, why am I not doing anything? So I do think it would take a while for them to really settle into, oh yeah, we can do whatever we want to do here. I think one of the first things that they would have done is to get used to and settle into being dog owners, because they're very
Yes.
used to taking care of other people and being focused on, saving people, hunting things, whatever. And they've had Jack to take care of for a little while, but he was never really a tiny child, and a dog is a responsibility to take care of. So I think probably
Yes.
that took up some of their time in the beginning, and they started falling into a routine of taking him for walks and teaching him sit stay or spoiling him or all of the above.
Okay,
Yeah.
Lynn Kramer.
Well, I think that would have been a learning curve more for Dean than for Sam because Sam had his own dog back in the in between when Dean was in purgatory. So, but yeah, I mean, they could have done that. To me, I thought they would have immediately contacted everybody, possibly gone to see those closest to them just to kind of reassure themselves that they were there and they were okay and everything like that. And that would be the travel and that would explain them getting in the car at the end of 19 and driving off and be like, okay, we're going to go check on everybody. We're going to go reconnect. And in doing so, maybe also reconnect the Hunters Network, possibly for later on, even though it was quiet for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's a normal reaction for them to want to check on everybody that hadn't been killed off yet, and make sure that they were okay, make sure that Chuck didn't, mess with them on his way out and just decide to clear the board just for one last nasty, um, and spread the word that the heaven and hell are closed now. They're not effing around with us anymore. We're back to normal supernatural threats instead of extra supernatural threats. And that could have certainly taken some time, and they wouldn't have had to have been, um, they wouldn't have had to take the direct route to do those things.
Mhm.
So they could have spread that out with road trips and, some of Dean's favorite places to get pie or, see roadside attractions. Um, and now that my screen has changed, I'm going to start new rounds with Lynn. What are some things, what are some other things aside from maybe getting in touch with the Hunter Network that you think would have been a priority for them? And I agree, settling in with the dog and getting those things fixed, but what else? Lynn Zubernis?
Um, before I answer that, I do want to say that actually, I think you're right. That is what they actually would have done first, because we saw in 1519 how like traumatizing it was for them to
Yeah.
know that so many people they loved and cared about had been wiped out. There was that horrible scene where Sam is like
Mhm.
frantically on the phone trying to call people, that it rang so true, because of course that's what you would do. Even if you
Yeah.
knew, you would call all those cell phones, and just the guilt that he felt, especially about those people being gone. So I agree with Lynn. I think that's exactly what they would do first, and after that they could play with the dog. I think once they did reassure themselves that people were there and that they'd spent some time with them, I don't know. I think maybe they would want to do some of the things that have always been on their wish list or their bucket list that they never got to do. Maybe they would take that trip to the Grand Canyon and finally go see the Grand Canyon. They referenced that a couple times. Or, they used to talk about driving all day to get to a concert of one of their favorite bands. They haven't, in the very early seasons, they used to think about things like that. And we used to hear that they used to do things like that. And by the time we get to season 15 and the end of the show, it's been a really long time since we saw them, other than the Pie Festival, which we finally see. But before that, it's been a really long time since we've seen them be able to do anything like that, because their hands have just been so full. So I would like to think that they decide to cross a few things off their bucket list. Maybe the Grand Canyon.
Okay, Lynn Kramer?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that, but I could also see them getting restless being on the road so much too. So having them do like, okay, we're going to go do some things and then go back home. And then they have their routine there. And once they start getting restless again there, then they go do some things and come back. And that's where the whole, how long was it in between the two? Because it just depends on everything that they possibly want to do. And if there were life events for their friends, they would include those in, that as well.
Okay,
So,
Melissa?
Um, one of the road trips they would have taken was the field that Dean nearly burned down, lighting the fireworks for Sam that 4th of July. My headcanon is always that the first 4th of July, after they were free, Dean says, Sam, get in the car. And Sam's like, where are we going? It's a surprise. Load the dog up. He's got all the fireworks loaded in the back, coolers loaded. They drive there and he surprises Sam with it, because that scene with them shooting off the fireworks is one of my absolute favorite scenes in the show. If I ever got attached, when I do my supernatural sleeve, that's got to be in there somehow, because I just love that scene. And I'm sorry, what was the actual question?
That was it.
Okay.
What do you think would be some of their priorities?
I also think that another priority, because we have all of the AU world back there, like, because the ones who were the AU hunters who were here, who then disappeared when Chuck disappeared them, and then Jack brought them back. I think that they would have spent some time training them up, making sure that they had the tools to deal with our monsters, so that, because that would give the guys a little bit more opportunity for a break, because we've got no angels, we've got no demons, we've got no influences from either realm, so we're just regular monsters. These AU hunters can handle it if they knew what they were doing. And because when we see the guys like make a breakfast and go into the pie festival, they're clearly not very pressed for work the way they were in the early seasons, where before we had angels and demons, they were still go, 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 go. So I think that those AU hunters took some of the slack for that.
Okay. I think about the people that I've known who have retired, and it seems like there's a honeymoon period where it's like, oh, I don't have to go to work. I can do anything I want, and that lasts until they get bored. That lasts until they put in the garden, and done a couple of home projects and done some of the stuff on their to-do list or their bucket list, and go, oh, and that only took 6 months. Now what? And I can imagine that happening with Sam and Dean, where because they're still yet way too young to retire. So I can see them having their to-do lists and their wish lists and getting through it pretty quickly. And part of that is downtime and recovery time, although I don't think you're ever going to recover from their lifetime of PTSD. But some rest, some relaxation. And then I think they're going to look around and go, now what? Because both of them are used to having not only enormous responsibility, but enormous impact, making a difference. And I wonder about becoming the new Bobby, because there are still ghosts and monsters and vampires, and who better to train them than the Winchesters, who's left to train them besides the Winchesters. And not only does that take some of the work off their shoulders, but it also means that once these people are trained and deployed and out there, they can be a resource. They can hunt when they want and not hunt, but they're not leaving people in the lurch by not having any kind of hunter to come to their aid. And it's a big country. The Impala's not getting any younger. And so crisscrossing it in a 1967 car isn't going to last forever. So having even regional teams that they oversee and train, I think would make a lot of sense, given their huge amount of experience. Lynn, any thoughts on that kind of scenario?
I'm torn. I'm torn between, like, you're totally right. Like, making a difference and having a sense of purpose is something that they've always gotten from hunting, and they're definitely going to want that. And I don't think they're ever going to walk away from that, which was Kripke's whole thing of this has to be the ending, because as long as they're alive, they're going to be hunting. They're going to be trying to save the world. They're never going to retire in the sense of sitting on a rocking chair in the porch. It's not in them. So I can see where they would be pulled to do something like that, but they've also always been kind of insular. And after having been so much, I can also see them continuing to be kind of insular, wanting to go and make sure everybody's all right, but also just kind of wanting to be the two of them. especially after all the AU people were like in the bunker and everything for a long time. So I guess it depends on how long they had in that interim. Like if it was only a year, 6 months or a year, I don't think they would get to that point. I think it would be mostly just the two of them trying to recover and also keep doing what they're doing, as you said, as young, fairly young men, seem very young to me. But I think if it went on to the 4 or 5 years, then that's where I can see them like starting to want to branch out and starting to think in more of a, when they think about their legacy, how is this going to be able to keep going, and what do they need to put in place to make sure that even when they're not there, that other people will be taking care of things.
Okay. Lynn Kramer?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when the purpose. As soon as you said that, Lynn, I was like, I mean, that's what I had been thinking when Gail was talking. It's they would need that because they've always had a purpose, and it hasn't really changed since they're still monsters. If there weren't any monsters, it's hard to tell. Sam's the one that's most adaptable to that, to the real world without monsters and not hunting, even though we can go, he probably still was even once his son was born because his son has the mark, has the tattoo. So he was, still keeping his toe in somehow, but he was also having a really normal life. So he's the most adaptable. Where Dean would get too restless. I couldn't see him being happy, sitting still, just sitting in the bunker, cleaning his guns for
Okay.
the rest of his life.
Okay. Melissa?
This literally just flashed across my head. Why did DJ have the anti-possession tattoo if there were no more demons? Why did they do that? There's no more demons. Why
After
did
everything
DJ?
they've been through, wouldn't you err on the side of caution?
You never know. Things could change.
Rowena's in charge.
We know that there was an application on the desk in Dean's bedroom. That was in the shot. We don't know what it was. There has been toss around that it was a fire department application. I'm going to veto that because Dean was too old to apply to a fire department. Maybe a volunteer fire department, but certainly not paid. He was past the age that most fire departments are going to hire somebody new. My headcanon is it was an EMS service kind of thing. I think Dean would have been very good at that, being able to help people, good under pressure. They patched each other up all the time, so he's already got a leg up on people with the skills and the sight of blood and dismember it. And like nothing's going to shake him. We never really see it on screen, but we know that they had to encounter all kinds of horrific human injuries. And while they never address it in the show on screen, it had to happen. So my headcanon is after, I agree with Lynn Zubernis about initially they would have been hunkering down and just being. I don't see them like reaching out to find other sources of satisfaction other than just continuing to hunt. But I think if it was like that 3 to 5 year mark, eventually they would have started looking for something outside of the bunker and outside of hunting.
I'm thinking about, again, real people I know and how they have reacted to retirement. There's that burst of freedom where it's, I can do anything I want. I can sleep in till 10 o'clock in the morning every single day. I don't have to go anywhere. And then they kind of work and they work through their bucket list and they take all their trips and they do all those things that they've been putting off. And then not only do they kind of run out of bucket list, but they look around and go, I still want to do something that makes a difference. I never did get a chance to X, Y, Z. And maybe that's a craft. Maybe that is volunteer work. Maybe it's coming up with a side gig that ties into something they love to make or do. Maybe it's, I broke Melissa up and I don't even know what I said. Um, but they start looking around for meaning. and purpose and a way to contribute and give back. And I agree completely that Dean would find something on the very active side of that. And I could see Sam, you know, teaching part-time, tutoring, doing some things like that. Okay, Melissa, what did I say?
It's not anything you said. It was more like pursuing hobbies. So there's a fanfic, or 12 probably. Sam is a yoga instructor because he's so bendy. I mean, and if you have ever seen Jared on any of the conventions, I mean, he's constantly twisting himself into all kinds of, you know, should be uncomfortable for a man his age positions. So, you know, Dean's off being an EMT, and Sam's the yoga instructor. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, he did do the yoga instructor in that one episode. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Which kind of brings me to the other question is, 1520, Dean dies. This is traumatic for Sam. And yet, after an unspecified period of time, we see Sam with the dog and a kid and blurry woman. What do you think Sam did after the pyre, after he sent Dean off, after he had a chance to grieve? Uh, what do you see him coming out of that grief shell and making a life with? Lynn, Zubernis?
I've never thought about that. Well, it's interesting. So Jared and Jensen have both been asked about that firefighter application that we glimpsed on the desk. They both said it was not Dean's. And then Jensen said, maybe it was for a case or something. And then Jared said, or maybe it was Sam's. But they both agreed it was not Dean's, that Dean would not have been looking for anything but hunting at that point anyway. But I don't see Sam becoming a firefighter either. It seems to me that after Sam did all the grieving, and we see that he does take some jobs, so he does stay in hunting for a little while, but when he decides to get out of that and try to do, honor his brother's wishes and live a normal life, break the cycle like Dean wanted him to do. The way that he looked and the way we saw him sort of sitting there at the table helping his son with homework, I feel like he would be what we've seen him be in so much fan fiction, which is like, a professor or working at a library or something. I could see him going back to school and getting a library sciences degree or something, and using his knowledge of the lore, maybe working at a university library that has a lot of antiquity books. And I could see him doing something scholarly like that. I would not see him being a firefighter. I think Jared only said that to get the people who were rather harassing Jensen about, Dean he wanted to get out of hunting. He didn't want to be a hunter. And Jensen being like, that's not true. And Jared kind of jumped in and said it was Sam's, but I don't really really think that's
I can see that.
I forgot about that, Lynn.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're right. I remember that conversation now.
Yeah, but I don't think he would have been a firefighter. I see him as a professor or a librarian type.
Mm-hmm. Lynn Kramer?
yeah, I agree with that. That he definitely went into something more academic. I mean, he'd fit in our world very well, Lynn.
Yeah.
I mean, he just fits it. And it also, I think the timeline would depend on who that woman is that he marries. Who is the mother of his son? If she's another hunter? I know there's a lot of different theories on who it is and whatnot, but I still think he would have probably ended up going into, especially since he was helping his son learn stuff, some kind of academic role, which would have made it easy.
Okay. Melissa?
After he got done drinking, this time he didn't hit a dog. My headcanon is that that last case that he took was and this is, if Carol were here, she'd be arguing with me over it. But she's not, so I can say it. The last case that he took, the parents were killed. He found the baby. He killed the monster. He took the baby and raised it as his own. Blurry woman is the nanny. And I think that Sam was an elementary school teacher. I think he went back to school and I think he taught kids. Because that was really the way to honor his brother, because his brother was good with kids, right? We see it a couple of times. We see it a lot in fan fiction, but we see it a couple of times. For Dean raised Sam. He was good with kids. You see him with Ben. You see him with other kids. He was always good with kids. So I think that Sam's way of honoring his brother would have been to go do something with kids. So I'll go with elementary school teacher.
Okay. Well, I can definitely see Sam after the grieving, after he sobers up, um, being in teaching of some sort at some level. I don't think he could help it, whether it's training new hunters or whether it is, um, being an adjunct professor, all of the above. I think it's just in his blood to pass along what he knows to the next group. I think it would be fun if he also had a side gig, maybe of hunting down lost important books and manuscripts, magical or arcane. And he's sort of the Indiana Jones of libraries, where he goes to find these hidden books that might be dangerous in the wrong hands or just need to be found. And it's legendary that there's a copy. I can see him getting very into that, where it's not quite as dangerous as hunting vampires, but there's still going to be danger. But he's also contributing to the knowledge of the future for additional hunters and for the next generation. And I could see him finding validation in that.
And that wouldn't put Dean Jr., DJ, whichever name you want to use,
Right.
that wouldn't put him at danger the way hunting monsters would once the baby was born. Like,
Right.
Whether you say that the blurry woman was a wife or a caregiver or just a friends with benefits or whatever scenario you create for a blurry woman, Sam wouldn't have wanted to put her or Dean Jr. in danger. So I don't think he would. He stopped hunting when, in my opinion, he stopped hunting when the baby came into his life, because he wouldn't want to put either of them in danger.
Well,
But
and
hunting the books is a good idea. I like
yeah.
that.
Well, it's also a way to recognize Bobby's legacy and anything that they were able to save from Bobby's library, from the Men of Letters bunker library. I could see Sam being very motivated also as a tribute to Bobby, just, coming up with these resources and centralizing it.
And it would
Well,
give him
folks,
a legit source of money
right.
to he
Right.
needs to afford that
Which
fancy
he would
house.
need. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, the magic credit card didn't go away. The magic bank account didn't go away.
I can't see him continuing doing that, though. I really can't see him still trying to.
That would be hard if he
that.
stayed in the same place.
Yeah.
That would be, I
Well, he
think.
had Charlie hooked the two of them up with
True.
Dick Roman's money.
Yeah.
So they had the sources. Now, whether he wanted to still access it, because whose name was that under, and whose name was he living under post Dean's death? I can't see Sam changing his name.
Yeah.
I can't see him being anything other than Sam Winchester, because he would not leave Dean behind.
Well, folks, we have blown through our time with all these wonderful theories. So before we go, please let everybody know where we can find you online. And like, if Lynn, you have a new project coming up, tell us about it. Lynn, Zubernis?
You can find me on all social media at Fangasm SPN. You can find all of my books on Supernatural on Amazon or on my website at fangasmthebook.com, including the two that have chapters by Jensen and Jared and Misha and the rest of the cast. The book I'm working on now won't be out for a year, but it is kind of the whole history of Supernatural from the beginning all the way through to the end. So not headcanons, they're not included, so it doesn't include what we talked about tonight, but includes just about everything else about Supernatural. So I'm excited about that one.
Awesome. Lynn Kramer?
You can find me at Facebook and Instagram under my name, because I'm not that creative with my name.
Okay. Melissa?
You can find Kitty and I on the Facebook group that you moderate, TFWNC. No, I never get it right.
Supernatural TFWNC on Facebook.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I always get it wrong. We're
Okay.
here talking about supernatural and continual,
Okay.
right?
I'm pretty easy to find at gailcmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on pretty much all the social media. I've got new books coming out all the time under both names, but like I said, all the modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. So thank you all for being such wonderful panelists, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon, so we'll see you online.